volume is different for everyone as far as what is optimal for them to see good results.
Done right, it can be one of the most important factors of your training. Done wrong can be probably one of the most detrimental.
You're going to have great weeks, you're going to have bad weeks, and it doesn't mean that you're not making progress.
So if you can go 10 weeks, 12 weeks without taking a break, your training is not hard enough.
If you didn't have that week of just recovery and like taking a step back, strength and hypertrophy and like those two things go hand in hand. Like you can't have one without the other. Hi guys, welcome back to episode 4 of Strong Mind, Built Body.
Hello, welcome back.
Thanks for listening in. We're super excited to start this episode. This episode's called Listen to Your Body, Optimize Your Recovery, and Train More Instinctively. So a lot of good stuff to cover today. I think before we get into that, James, how are you doing?
Great, I'm doing awesome. Today is a good day. I just officially sold my first training package of online coaching.
Yay, that is so exciting. Good for you.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a long time coming, long in the time in the making, but all that hard work finally paid off.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, this is just the beginning. So like, I'm sure you'll get many more clients to come. It's always like we were talking about this the other day. It's always hard to get started, but once you get going, it's like the snowball effect. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Because thinking about it, like the only people that know what I'm doing is because my word of mouth, maybe some other people that share my posts, whatever. But another client you have, it just kind of adds on a whole nother door of voice and kind of almost advertising in a way.
For sure, yeah, that's awesome.
I'm super excited. It's here. It's finally go time. So let's go.
Yeah, definitely check out. For those of you who haven't heard about this, James started this whole kind of online coaching, training, coaching, and then nutrition kind of virtual, I guess, coaching solution is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
So he's got a whole like page on his website that talks about the details. And so if you're interested in something that has to do with, training, nutrition, or both, definitely give that a look because you know your stuff and you worked really hard on it. So
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I like how I said that, the coaching solution. I never thought of that before, but that's a good way of saying it.
Thanks. I definitely just came up with that on the spot, so I'm glad
Awesome.
you liked it.
I might have to use that.
Cool. Yeah, so anything else exciting going on in your life?
That's probably the most exciting part. How about you?
Me. So, update. I had my first Soul Fitness full body sculpt class last Wednesday.
That's right.
And it was sold out. Like literally 13 of the 14 spots filled. So like, okay, basically sold out. So yeah, I was super pumped about that. Wasn't expecting that many people to come, but they showed up for me and I think it went really well. Obviously got to work out some kinks with, teaching classes and, I guess the material, but overall it was great. They worked hard. I think they got a good workout out of it. So I've got another one this Wednesday, and I'm pumped.
Dang. So is that just once a week you're doing those, or is it?
So yeah, right now it's every Wednesday night, 7 to 7:45. And I think we're just gonna kind of go from there to see if people do like it. Then they might, get me in another time slot. So that's kind of my hope because it is a lot of fun to teach. Like I actually love group fitness more than I thought I would. So.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm happy for you, man. That's such a small but big victory.
Yeah. For sure. Even like, okay, this is kind of funny, but I don't know if you saw it. I posted like a hip thrust burnout like Instagram post yesterday, just something that like I did in my lower body day yesterday. Got it from Brett Contreras, of course. And when I was just looking at the insights of the post, it was like 8 people saved this post, and I was like, wait, what? That's so cool. I'm so glad.
That's cool.
Like, yeah, like I mean, just the small victories, I feel like they add up because it's like, okay, people want to like save this for their workout later. That's a compliment.
Right, and like the hour you spent on the post like actually like mattered. I mean,
I know.
It's a good feeling.
Yeah, and these like these Instagram posts, like I tell you, they are just like life sucking. I mean, I love them, but they take a lot of time and effort if you want to like put out good content. I mean, you can really.
No, it does. It got to the point where I schedule them in my day. Like, okay, today's Tuesday. Today's a day for a post. Like 2:30 to 3:30, I'm working on the post.
Exactly. And they always end up taking like almost an hour. So I gotta
Yeah.
work on that, but it's a work in progress.
Yeah. Well, speaking of training, that's
Yes.
the bulk of our conversation today, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be our best episode yet.
I know, no
Um,
pressure for us, but yeah, I agree.
oh, wait, before we get into that though, say your big announcement. I know it was a couple weeks ago, cancer free.
Oh, yes, of
That's
course.
important.
Yes, I did. Thank you. Yes. So I did get my scan back and I'm officially cancer free, so that's really
Yeah,
exciting.
heck yeah. I
Um,
was so happy when I saw that.
oh, thanks. Yeah, I got so much love that day just from friends and then of course family, and I just talked to like everyone in my extended family that I haven't seen in forever, and everyone's just super, relieved and excited, and all the hard work paid off, so I feel I'm just ready to move on to like the next chapter of my life, so it's exciting.
You kind of have this glow to you that you didn't have even like 2 months ago when we started talking. Like that's serious though. Like
Aw.
it's just like a big weight I can just kind of tell is like lifted off your shoulders.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
thanks. I mean, yeah, you can probably see it in my face. Like it
Yeah.
definitely it's anything that is stressing you out, I feel like it's subconsciously, yeah, you
Yeah.
can see it through your face and your
Yeah.
skin, whatever, but thank you for
Yeah. Absolutely.
pointing
Oh,
that
for
out.
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Well,
yeah.
on that happy note,
Yeah.
let's dive in. Oh my gosh, where do we even begin?
I know. We're going to try our best to kind of break down this episode for you in, I guess, bite-sized chunks that you can digest. No pun intended, and
Right.
just keep it as simple as possible, but also super informative. So,
Yeah. So I think a good place to start is just talk about volume and what that means. Just dive into that because I really think done right, it can be one of the most important factors of your training. Done wrong can be probably one of the most detrimental, as we both found out.
for
Um,
sure.
cool. Well, do you want to take the floor and
Yeah, I'll kind of talk about my perspective on volume. So by volume, we mean like kind of like the combination of the sets and reps that you're doing in each workout. That kind of equates to how much volume you're doing over time when it comes to your training. So like when I first started, I guess, training a couple years ago, again, back then I wasn't really tracking my workouts. I wasn't making personalized programs for myself. I was just kind of doing random workouts that I found on Instagram from fitness influencers that I kind of looked up to at the time. And like a big thing that I noticed is a lot of their workouts are super high volume, like so many sets, like at least 4 sets every exercise, you know, reps not really like similar to like what I do now, I guess, but just the amount of sets that I was
yeah,
doing, I didn't even realize how exhausted I was after each workout, and like how, you know, I guess what's the word I'm trying to say, like bad my recovery was just because I was like
fatigued?
constantly
Yeah,
spinning my wheels and doing way too much for what like I could handle. So I guess what I've came to realize over the past couple years is that volume is different for everyone as far as I think what is optimal for them to see good results. So like some people might prefer higher volume workouts and they feel better, they recover better, they feel or they have better results from that. Me on the other hand, I prefer lower volume, so like I will take most of my sets near or to failure and I'll work really hard. I'll go really hard for those sets, but like I need more recovery time. I need to do less total sets in order to feel like I can give that much effort every time I train. That
yeah.
makes sense.
No, for sure. And so how just kind of go off that, how many like do you kind of equate it for sets per workout per muscle group or kind of sets per week or kind of how do you go about that personally?
I kind of do sets per week, but and so usually I try to stick like with lower body. I've been doing 3 lower body, like I guess you could say glute focused workouts a week because that's, I mean,
Sure.
according to my goals right now. So I try to stick around, I'd say like 30-ish sets. And
Okay, okay.
that's like research that I've come across from like Brett Contreras. Like glutes, for example, I think is a muscle group that can handle that high a volume a week if you do it right.
Yeah.
So like I typically per workout, honestly, like no more than like 10 to 12 sets a workout is kind of my jam. Like that's what I love.
Yeah, and that's cool because that kind of falls in line with the research saying that's a kind of like the good place to cap it at too.
Mhm.
And since you got the high frequency in there, it's cool because those combination of the higher frequency um, plus the kind of optimal sets per workout, you're really probably doing a pretty justice to your glutes. I mean,
Yeah, for sure. And that's just something too, like I feel like I have energy at the end of the week. I don't feel so beat up, like
yeah,
after every session. And that is so huge. And we'll get more into recovery later. But on kind of the flip side, I'm curious to hear like what's your optimal volume? Like how do you train? What have you learned over time?
yeah. So for me, we define volume in pretty similar ways. Technically speaking, the definition is sets times reps times load. So say you
Yeah,
have,
sorry, I missed the
yeah,
load.
no, it's all good. And I don't like to go off that, but it makes sense. So for me, I personally track volume as number of sets. Um, Kind of per muscle group per week is the main thing, but you also break it down into kind of workouts too. So yeah, so for me, for example, my last mesocycle at my peak week is like the last week of the phase. I was doing 24 sets per back per week, divided into 2 sessions. So that's kind of just like to give an idea of that. However, I didn't start at that. I started a little lower, and then we're going to get into this too. But I work with a system that I don't want to say is by RP. I mean, they did kind of coin some terms, or Renaissance periodization, for those who don't know what RP is. But basically, just kind of going through literature and realizing that there is a minimum effective volume that you kind of have to do this much to see gains. That's kind of like the floor point, which is probably around 6 to 10 sets per week per muscle group, and then so that's a minimum effective volume, and then there's a maximum recoverable volume, which kind of works your way up to the ceiling or the ceiling of that floor. So let's say it was 6 to 10. The maximum recover volume to that might be, depending on muscle group and obviously a lot of factors, like 16 to 24 sets. So what I do is I actually progress kind of through that every week in my mesocycle. And my mesocycles, just my training blocks are usually 4 to 6 weeks long. So that's how I work right now, and I'm going to kind of backtrack to how I used to work, and there was just a abomination of training in regards to volume and recovery. But so it's kind of cool because I kind of create a system that um, lets me work my way up the volume ranking based on a couple factors. And I shouldn't say I created it. I'm kind of modifying it based off what I learned through the ropes through the years. But let me just give a quick example. So let's say I start at biceps. Let's say I start training them 3 times a week, and my total training volume for week number 1 is 10 sets. So maybe I'll do 4 sets on Monday, 3 sets on Thursday, and another 3 sets on Saturday, something like that. So then, based off of my performance and recovery, I will either increase or keep volume the same each workout each week. So let's say, and then I'll kind of use that recovery is indicated by soreness. So let's say my biceps are still super sore from Saturday, and now it's Monday. So if they're still really sore, chances are they're not recovered enough to progress in volume, but they're probably like what I did last time was probably optimal to keep making gains based off that kind of volume number. So that's an indicator, and then also use performance. So it's just really easy. Let's say last week I got 10 reps, and this week I got 11 reps, and I'm not that sore. It's probably an indicator that I can do a little more because my muscles, they adapted, they didn't get damaged excessively. And then when I start seeing that performance drop off or stagnate, or soreness kind of stay where it is or not decrease, then I'll be like, okay, now it's time to kind of hold back or maybe take a deload. So yeah, so basically kind of using those 2 factors, I ask myself every session, kind of during the session too, am I still sore? Is this muscle group still sore right now? And am I increasing performance set to set? So last week, if I did 10 reps, 9 reps, 8 reps, and then this week I did 11 reps, 10 reps, and 9 reps, boom, I increased performance and I'm not sore. I'm gonna add a set to that workout. Maybe. And this is a very crash course version.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So
go for it.
I was just gonna say, so do you always kind of base your recovery, well, mainly off of soreness? Like, will you work out a body part or a muscle group again, even if it's still sore, or do you wait till it's not?
So I will work it out again, just because I usually don't at this point run into the factor of it being like too excessively sore, just because I kind of know, like
Yeah.
I know that if I start my triceps training at week 1 at 18 sets, I'm just gonna die. Like, and then I'll be burned out by week 3.
Yep.
So, but if I start at 8 sets, I have a little soreness, but it's nothing to be my concern myself about. And it's kind of hard too, because soreness doesn't really mean a whole lot, but what it can mean is that maybe you did a little too much, or it's a new movement or whatever. That can kind of indicate, yeah.
And I was just gonna say that, I mean, typically if you're following the right kind of training program, you want to be doing the same movements over and over again because you need to progress those movements. Getting sore after every session. If you're getting sore after every training session, that means you're not doing something right, because you're probably doing a bunch of new exercises all the time, shocking your body, quote unquote.
Yeah, silly.
And that's kind of silly. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and I guess I should kind of disclaim this now. Like, I probably won't change my exercise in my training block, which again, like a mesocycle is just a string of 4 to 6 weeks of training together, unless it's causing me joint pain or I have a good reason to. But yeah, so kind of just with that, so that's how I do it. I take my volume as a very like dynamic approach based off of what's happening to me. So if I'm still progressing and I kind of am getting indications that maybe a little more volume could be beneficial. And the reason why we increase volume anyway is because it has shown that to a point, the more, and I want to be careful when I say this because people get all upset and whatever, but the more volume relative to you and your recovery ability, probably the better. So if you can, if all else is equal and you can do 4 sets versus 8 sets for a muscle group, the 8 sets, again, if you're recovered and whatever, will probably give you a little better results than the 4. And it just kind of makes sense, like more is more to a point. Now, it doesn't mean that just because 4 sets is not great, that 30 sets, if you're not used to that, is going to be awesome. Well, if you're not doing it right, that's not necessarily true.
Exactly. Like you gotta, you don't want to destroy yourself, because if you were to do 8 sets, like you probably wouldn't be able to do your other training sessions justice that week. So you have to do it in a way that I feel like is sustainable too for like future sessions. Like you kind of have to look ahead while training for the present,
Exactly. And that's where really like stuff like exercise selection comes in too. Because from the research and just anecdotal evidence, if you do an exercise that stretches you, puts your muscles in a stretch position, let's say a stiff leg deadlift, that's probably going to produce a little more damage and therefore soreness compared to something like a lying leg curl. Now, this isn't a golden rule, but generally speaking, so, say I did hamstrings 3 times a week, which would be a lot, but let's just give an example. It would make sense to do the exercise that produces the most soreness maybe at the later end of the week, and then the one that kind of produces less soreness, chance to produce less soreness early in the week. So stuff like that, or even like if I was training glutes, I would probably do maybe hip thrusts earlier in the week where there's less chance for soreness. And then when I have more days, I wouldn't say earlier and later, basically just when I have more days to recover.
And that's kind of what I go off of too. Like when I do, I mean, trust me, sometimes training lower body for me 3 times a week is very daunting, and it's not realistic. Yeah. So like if I can get 2 great sessions, but then that weekend on Sunday, usually when I do my 3rd one, if I'm not just feeling it and I'm feeling unrecovered, like I will not force myself to do that 3rd session. It's just something I try to strive for. And, most weeks, if I do it right, I can make it work, and I'm kind of learning as I go. But like typically on that first day when I'm fresh from the weekend, I've got more sleep, like my recovery's been good. That's like the earlier on in the week is when I go for like my heavy hip thrusts, those PRs, those low reps. Yes. And then like my second session is usually heavier on like, let's say deadlifts, but then I just keep it lighter for the hip thrust. So like you kind of have to pick and choose. You can't like expect to do like heavy deadlifts, heavy hip thrusts, heavy squats all in one day, right? You would die.
Well, and I like how you said that a lot, because that's a really good way to go about it. Doing your heavier work in the beginning of the week, and then your quote lighter work later in the week. So for me, and this, like I said, this depends on a bajillion factors. But let's say some good rep ranges to work with are 5 to 10 to 20. So it would make sense if you're doing hip thrust twice a week, and different variations too. But let's say you're doing heavy hip thrusts on Monday for 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever reps. And then on Thursday, you do it again for a little higher, maybe 15 to 20. That's a great way to go about, because you're also providing different stimulus, different kind of pathways that induce different recovery results and soreness and everything. So yeah, that's a really good way to organize it. That's kind of cool that you like just instinctively do that, because that's a good way to go.
Yeah, and also like, well, you said instinctively, that's kind of like one of the words of the day.
Yeah.
Um, that's kind of, I think, well, what I like about talking to you, like we're learning so much from each other, but like I think your programming is more structured probably than mine is. And mine is, yeah, it's a little more instinctive. Like I really feel like once I started listening to my body, and like if I'm not recovered and I feel like crap that day, I don't force myself to train, and vice versa. If I'm feeling really good and I want to up the weight more than I thought I could, like go for it. Like that has given me more freedom in my training and I think better results. So,
Yeah, yeah, and it's cool because there's a lot to take over from that. Especially with my clients, we kind of have a formula. It would probably take a couple hour podcast to explain, but basically, there's a framework, and then there's kind of flexibility within that framework. So let's say um, the general goal of the set is to either increase it by 5-ish pounds or add a rep. But I say, hey, listen, depending on how you're feeling, if you walk in and you're like, oh my God, I'm so tired, whatever, just try to match reps, or if it comes to it, here's a kind of alternative plan. Let's just kind of get a little pump, just get that muscle one day to take a break and then hit it hard next time. So it's kind of cool, like instinctive, like here's the plan, but just because I say let's do, 4 sets times 85 pounds for 5 to 10 reps and try to beat your every single set from last time, you know, let's kind of work based off your instinctive kind of abilities to see what's best. Because if that's the only really big downside of online training is that I'm not exactly there to like, okay, are you sore right now on this exact set? So
yeah.
so kind of having these built-in systems where they can kind of be their own coach helps too. And that's why I think my clients are going to be surprised of how much they have to read when they sign on with me, because I typed out a lot of information that they need to know. It's because I think people kind of just think like, okay, I got a workout plan. Let's just do 3 times 8 here and then 4 times 5 here. It's like, well, we need a lot more than that. Just to be productive and safe too.
Oh,
Um,
exactly. I think the best two like type of programs and like ones written by trainers are ones that are dynamic and like allow
yes,
you to be flexible like every day and really like, because I don't know, if I write out a workout for myself and I feel, let's say, crappy that day, but like I would probably feel a little daunted by or like intimidated by like what I was supposed to set out to do. But then let's say I go in, yeah, first set, it's supposed to be a heavy hip thrust set, and I'm just not hitting like the PR that I wanted to or the weight that I wanted to. It's not lifting as easily as I thought it would. Then maybe you reel it back, put your ego aside and be like, okay, let's think about this. How could I make this training session better from here? From there, like I'd probably say, let's do a higher volume day, lighter weight, focus on feel rather than weight. And then you're still getting, yeah, like that pump out of it. And you're feeling good about yourself and you're feeling confident leaving the session versus like, oh, I'm just going to try to push this heavy weight anyways and just like hope for the best, even though it's going to suck. Like.
absolutely. And there's so many good things to that. So the dangers of doing that too is you put yourself in a situation where, yes, maybe last week you got 300 pounds by 5 on whatever lift, but that was last week. So let's say this week, because you're trying to progress, you try to add a set, try to add a rep, or a weight, um, but you just like can't do it. So let's say you get 3 reps with decent form, and then the last 2 reps are just really kind of shitty. Like, what's the point of doing that? You know what I mean? You might as well just either try to match what you did last week or go a little lighter. Like, there's just really no, because now you're risking having bad form, which can be an injury, and then if you get injured, well, then you're out for 2 weeks, and just not a good
Exactly.
avenue to go down. And then so there's that's leading into that, because that's kind of explains a big part of my training history for about a year. I can't 4 years back. I did not take an optimal approach to training, and which is okay. I learned a lot, and I'm glad I did it because I learned a lot from that today. But so I guess I started from a very, very high volume approach, and volume again defined for me by sets per week per muscle group. So, say like 20, 30 sets per muscle group per week. But the problem was I had no way of kind of auto-regulating that and customize it to me. So I just found a plan that I found online, and I just worked my absolute butt off. It was high volume mixed with very like high intensity training, and like close to failure. And I just drove myself into the dirt for a long time, and it was just terrible. Recovery was awful. I was always sore, and at that time I was like, yeah, I'm sore, I'm doing great. No, that's
Isn't
not
it
true.
funny how when you're first starting, you're like, yeah, the more sore, the better. Like, I'm such a badass. It's like, well, now then you
No,
realize how
yeah.
to train smarter, and you're like, what was I thinking?
Yeah, I know, because now if I get too sore, it's like an indicator to me that I did too much. Like this isn't not necessarily bad, but it's a good could be potentially a good indicator that you might want to change some variables or consider changing some variables.
Yeah,
But
soreness is overrated. Like,
yeah, oh
that's
no, it for
bottom
sure
line.
is. And yeah, and like I said, I use it for a potential marker of kind of what to do, like a reactive marker of what to do next. But definitely not the goal. Oh, definitely not the goal. We can make anybody sore by just having them do 1,000 walking lunges if they've never done walking lunges before, and yeah, you'd be sore for probably 2 weeks. you know,
Exactly.
but that would that be productive? No, that'd be silly.
Yep. So
But
go into
yeah,
more, yeah, I'm curious, like, or I guess when you made that
yeah,
mental switch or like
yeah. So
finding the balance.
I think I remember it distinctively when I just realized that I'm like, okay, this is not the way to go. I was in No, what was it? I got home. I was in freshman year of college, I believe, and I got home at like 3 from the gym, and I literally fell asleep from like 3 to like 6 a.m. the next morning. I just like died, and then I just felt terrible. Like you could just tell, like my appetite was messed up. I was like hungry at times, full at other times. It just wasn't really normal to me. Um,
Sounds like
yeah,
you had like a pop brownie or something.
yeah, no, literally, honestly though, and so I'm just like, okay, this isn't right. Like now it's starting to affect my school, and this isn't cool. So I'm like, okay, and then I started learning a little more about like, again, I knew what volume meant, I knew what all this stuff meant, but I remember kind of learning more about how to customize it to me. Well, then I kind of fell to the other. I love to go to the extremes. I,
Same.
I,
Oh, we could talk about that.
I preach, and I'm all for this. I preach, don't go to 0 to 100, but I still have fallen trap to that. So then, you read online from bro.com, and it's like, okay, high volume sucks. It's all about the lowest volume you can. And because I was still kind of a nut, I still like to push the intensity, as in like close to failure. So now it was all about, let's do all these triple rest pause sets where you just like absolutely like you turn on the heaviest metal you can find for every single set ever. I remember I bought a bottle of like the nose toric, like ammonia,
Oh
for
my
your, yeah.
gosh,
So like
gross.
it was like hardcore, like let's just absolutely go until like our muscles cannot move anymore. Which, and to be honest, training failure definitely has its merit. We can talk about that too. But this was like every single set, every single day for weeks on end.
Wait, wait,
And
wait. Didn't Breckentrez just post about training on the nerve? Isn't that something he just posted about?
yeah, yeah, like how, it's probably only a good
It's
idea to do sometimes, not a
not
lot.
all the time. So
Yeah.
you were basically doing what he said not to do, which was training on the nerve
Oh yeah.
24/7.
Oh yeah. It was intense. I would get in like this headset, and honestly, I had like at some points it was fun because like you put up some impressive numbers, technically speaking, and like I remember I was so proud. I did like incline dumbbell bench 95 pounds for like 3 reps. Just the greatest thing ever at the time.
That's
But at that point, so here's the problem though. One, I only cared about what my logbook said. So if last week I got 3 reps times 95 on the third triple rest pause, where basically triple rest pause is you do your set, and then you take 10, 20 seconds break, do another set and another set. So it's very intense. So say I
yeah.
got three reps on the third drop on the rest pause, like I would get 3 reps or more on the next time I did the workout. Like there's not an option to
There
do
was
less,
exactly.
even if that meant cheating my form. So now what had happened was half my reps were okay, and when I should have stopped because it was well beyond technical failure, I just kept going. So now I'm like moving my neck and shoulders weird to get the dumbbells up, and just it was not good. It was very bad, which actually led to a 6-month shoulder injury.
No
Um,
way. I didn't know that.
yep, yeah. So that my bicep tendonitis really bad, and then after that, then we finally kind of found the middle ground, and we've been doing that since. And I haven't been injured for years, not anything serious. Um, but yeah, so that was my journey. I went through way too high volume, way too low volume, just unproductive on both spectrums, to where I are now. So that's my gist of it. Yeah.
No, yeah, that's a great I mean, great story, honestly, because it's honestly very relatable. I don't think I trained on the nerve as hardcore as you did.
Yeah.
Didn't get the smelling salts, like
Yep.
didn't listen to heavy metal. didn't really injure myself either, which was good. But I will say once I kind of learned about how, you should progressive overload and how you should constantly be trying to set PRs or personal records, like I really, with the whole extremes thing, I'm an extreme person. I really took that to heart. Like I took it literally. I'm like, okay, if
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be hitting PRs all the time, then like every session, I should be able to hit a PR. And so I got so intimidated going into my sessions because I'm like, okay, today I gotta hit this, and if I don't, I'm gonna be really mad at myself. Like
Exactly.
it just burnt me out and I wasn't getting the results. My form was slipping a little bit, and yeah, like I was almost like, oh, like if it's form isn't quite there, like I'll still count it, like because I still got it, right? Like I would
Yeah,
like
still got
go in
12
my
reps, even
head.
though the last 4 were shit.
Exactly. And so then I'm like, this is not sustainable. Like, this doesn't feel right. I won't be able to train the rest of my life like this because, frankly, it's just not enjoyable. And I think there's a better way. And so then, yeah, so now I've kind of gotten into the mindset of like progression or progressing is not linear, right? It's undulating. You're going to have great weeks, you're going to have bad weeks, and it doesn't mean that you're not making progress. It's just impossible to constantly get another rep, go up in weight every single time you train.
Oh yeah, and that's such a good point too, because so what I was gonna say kind of segue into like training to failure and how that kind of incorporate into all this. Um, because let's say getting a PR, it's kind of without some parameters, it's kind of like a subjective term. So
You're right. Yeah.
your PR, was it at the point where like training to failure? Kind of how did it feel? So like what some guidelines. Let's say I use a system called reps in reserve, where basically it's pretty easy. It's pretty self-explanatory. Let's say there's the reps in reserve for the week is 2. That just means 2 reps till technical failure, 2 reps in the tank, 2 reps in reserve, what do you want to call it. Um, so let's say, for me personally, I start my mesocycles at around 3 to 4 reps in reserve. And the reason for that is, the research is pretty strongly found that 4 reps, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0 reps in reserve are where the most stimulation comes from. Kind of where anything below that, 5 or more, probably wouldn't induce gains, strength, hypertrophy as much or at all. So once you get kind of past that threshold of that 4, 3, 2, 1, 0 reps in reserve, that's when gains are made. So that's kind of why I start at the lower end and then I work my way up incrementally, which is also kind of nice because it provides opportunity to make progress regardless. So, let's say week 1 was 4 reps in reserve at 300 pounds. It just even if I didn't track my weights and reps and I kind of went up a rep in reserve, so like mentally just kind of figure like, okay, last week it was 4 and now it's 3. That's just basically like automatic progression within the system, within the program. So that's how I do it now. But the important to note is though that I do not train to failure all the time, and that's just ridiculous. But I do train on my last week. This isn't the only way to do it. This is how I do it, and how a lot of my clients will do it too. But I think that's just an important parameter to find because if I say I got a PR in squat, but my old PR was with 3 reps in reserve, and this one was with failure. You just kind of realize that. And just kind of give some definition to it too. So that's just my 2 cents on that kind of stuff. But
Yeah, no, and that's well, actually I just have a personal question that
yeah,
I'm kind of what I struggle with, I guess, is like so I go off of the same kind of programming style in that I try to start usually my first week is technically like my deload week, right? So I'm just like easing into the new program. I'm starting at about I would say like 70% effort. So I don't know what that would be in like reps in reserve. Just trying to get the feel down of like any new exercises that I'm doing, focus a lot on form versus again like pushing weight and just go more for feel. And then like weeks 2, 3, and 4, it's just kind of like a slow progression. Like maybe next week I'll go like 80% and then 90%. And then my last week is like kind of that PR week where I'm trying to like, go all out in a way. And then usually by the end of that week, my body's pretty beat up and I want another like deload week, right?
yeah, okay. So this is
Um,
really cool because you're quite literally basically doing the same thing I do, just calling it a little differently.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I've never really used like reps in reserve. And so I'm gonna be honest, like when you first brought that up like a while back when we started like
Yeah.
working together, I was like, wait, what is reps in reserve? I didn't know.
Oh, for sure.
So,
Yeah.
well, basically, so I was
Yeah,
just
go
gonna
for it.
ask is like, I don't know, like with my certain mentors who say, you should constantly be if you're training properly, you should be able to progress all the time, like hit different PRs and different rep ranges all the time. How do you hit PRs, but then also follow this kind of like strict
Yeah.
effort track of like 70% week 1, 80% week 2? Because like to me, a PR is almost like all out effort. So I'm like, how do I
Yeah.
equate those? Yeah.
So I that's a really good question. I'm glad you brought that up because for me in my training, and this is going to sound weird, but it's actually not. So it's not about, and again, this is going to sound weird, but it's not
No, no, no,
about
no. I'm
how.
open to it. Of
Yeah,
course.
for sure. So when I go to the gym, my goal personally is to build muscle. It's not to get stronger and it's not to set PRs, but it's to build muscle. However,
Yes.
I use getting stronger and I use PRs as an indication that I am building muscle, as long as some other things. So with that, if I did on week 1, let's say I start at 4 reps from reserve for that whole entire week. So that means that every single set I do is going to be at 4 reps from reserve, and I got 300 pounds. Now, fast forward to week 5, where it's 0 reps from reserve. I'm going to technical failure, and I got 320 pounds for the same number of reps, let's just say. So then I'll take that, and assuming I did the same exercise the previous mesocycle, the previous training block, I'll take that 325 pounds, like I said, or 320, I can't remember what I said, and then I'll compare it to, okay, last week, so 7 weeks ago at this point, or whatever it is, how much reps did I get? How much weight did I use for the same lift when I was at 0 reps in reserve? Oh, I only used 310. Now I'm at 325. Boom, PR. So I'll kind of take it as like a more over the long term. Because and to be honest, and here's the thing too, there is some flaws of reps in reserve. For example, the research shows that the less experienced you are with reps in reserve and stuff like that, you're going to be worse at tracking it. The average amount for untrained people was like they thought they were going to failure and they actually had 8 reps left in them after that somebody.
Yeah.
You're right, yeah. So if I say 4 reps in reserve, you might be very well doing 8 reps in reserve. At that point, your training really isn't that productive. So that's why and then the cool thing about going to failure is that once you go to failure, you're at failure. The definition of failure is you can't get another rep. I prefer you can't get another rep with good form. Once
Exactly.
you're
Yeah.
there, you're there. There's that's the end points. There's no kind of second guessing because oh, okay, I can't stand up. I reach failure. Yeah, there you go. Boom, black and white.
Yep.
In a way. So that's kind of cool. So that's why I usually, when I say PRs, I kind of focus it more on the last week of my mesocycle and then compare that to the last week of the other mesocycle and previous ones like that. And then, so there's that too. And then also, a cool way to do it is, like I said, every week I try to either progress in weight or reps or both, if I'm really feeling it. So let's say on something like bicep curls, which is kind of funny because you usually don't think of bicep curls something you do set a PR on. But let's say week 1, we'll use the example I used before, I got 10 reps, 9 reps, and 8 reps. And then the next week, I got 11 reps, 11 reps, 10 reps, and 9 reps, kind of bumped up each set by 1 rep. Technically speaking, I just got a PR. You know what I mean? Like for this mesocycle. And then if I keep doing that for years and years and years, and all of a sudden instead of using 30 pounds, I'm using 45, and I got, for the same amount of reps or whatever it is, because, and obviously this isn't like a year, like a infinite thing, because if everybody did that, then I'll be currently 500 pounds. So,
Exactly.
yeah, so that's how I do it. So I see PRs as on a global scale of like, I'm comparing, mesocycle to mesocycle, specifically the last week. And stuff like honestly, like I don't give a crap of my PR and my curls like that. I'd more look at that as session to session, kind of as a progression method.
Well, exactly. There's certain exercises you don't need to track
Yeah,
PRs
yeah.
for
Oh no, for
everything.
sure. But then for squats this last mesocycle, I just hit, it was 250 by 6, and this was like with like really really good form.
Yeah.
And that was, I don't take my compound movements, like big scary ones that could actually kind of kill you, like squats, to complete failure. I usually one rep in the tank.
Of course.
As long
Yeah.
as I can like control myself to do that.
No, for sure.
But then like last mesocycle, I would capped at 250 by 4. One
Oh,
before this.
awesome.
So like that's a 2 rep increase, and the form probably even got a little better. So that's progress right there, baby.
For sure.
And yeah, so that's how I track PRs. So it's kind of on a, like I said, I track basically every single set. I track it. So, and like I've been saying, let's say bicep curls, I do 3 sets, bicep curls. Set 1, I got 10 reps. Set 2, I got 9 reps. Set 3, I got 8 reps. So I write that down. And next week, I'm like, okay, here's what I got. I'm either going to try to match this or increase it by a rep or increase it by the weight. And this depends on the exercise, on a lot of other things. But, and then if I got another rep, even on one set, if I got another rep on even one set, that's progress. I technically got a PR compared to last week.
Yeah.
All time. And then once that kind of stalls out, then I'll go from barbell bicep curls to dumbbell bicep curls, or then dumbbell spider curls, kind of
and you change up the variation.
Yep, which allows me to start kind of over and then progress until that stalls out, and then go on forever and ever.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of treat PRs then as more of like a cumulative process versus just like standalone personal records.
Yes,
which is interesting, because I mean, I like how you said PRs are so subjective, because you could literally PR in like 1,000 different ways.
Yeah.
So it kind of just depends on how. I mean, I don't think there's really like a right or wrong answer.
Oh, no, not at all.
It's just kind of like what works best for you, because your training method might work great for you, but maybe not for me. And then my training method might work great for me and not for you. Like it's not, as long as you're, I don't know, progressing as optimally as you can for you.
Yeah.
But of course, like that's really interesting. Like I'll definitely think about that, because I guess I take them as more like, I do track all my workouts and my sets in a notebook, but then I have a separate kind of like Excel spreadsheet that I track PRs, and those are more like standalone sets versus like, okay, I did like 10, 8, 6 or something like that.
Yep.
So
no, well, and that's really cool too. And like I used to do that now, and because I was a little more like obsessed with the numbers, which I'm not. It's totally fine. It's totally cool. I love beating my sit rep squat. Max.
Yeah.
But so now I kind of just, because like my goals really aren't strength in a way where like I care about it to the point of tracking it. I just know, it's going to be there, and it's because I kind of use it more of like a performance based to make sure I'm still progressing as far as like growing muscle.
But that's interesting, because your goals, like you want to be a bodybuilder, and so you're focusing more, I feel like, on hypertrophy, right?
Yes. So here's the thing. I think not tracking your PRs, and for me that would mean like week to week progression. For you, that might mean like a kind of standalone set. If you're not doing that, especially not tracking your workouts, then like you're probably not getting better. Like you're honestly probably not. So I think it's really funny. Remember when I first started this kind of bodybuilding thing, and people were like, "Oh no, you just got to focus on like just strength," and that's why I'm like, and back then I only separated strength as like powerlifting, and bodybuilding is like not care about just go in there, get a pump, dick around and walk out, whatever. But like that just couldn't be farther from the truth, because like I very focused on strength, and like if strength means increasing a weight a little bit, or technically getting a PR or increasing reps a little bit, like I'm not there to get stronger, but like getting stronger helps me get there. That's basically it. And it's weird because it's like I need to get stronger in a way, as in apply progressive overload to get my physique goals. So I couldn't really do that unless I took a ton of drugs. I guess I could do that. I could take a ton of drugs, probably do like 4 sets of push-ups, and my chest would be great. I mean, whatever, that's a shitty example. But if you want to do this in the long run, it's like that's why I'm always like, wait. So bodybuilding has nothing to do with strength, but like what do you think I do in the gym? Just like go and do whatever the heck I want, and then no, I'm like I have a goal of what I want to beat, the reps I want to match, beat, or get better at, and then I do it. And then if I did, cool, I did what I'm supposed to do. So it's a weird paradigm of like I'm not there to get stronger, but I need to get stronger in some form of way in order to reach my physique goals. So they definitely play hand in hand. That's why I'm always like I just don't get this, like bodybuilders don't care about getting stronger. Well, yes, they don't care about getting stronger, but to you, getting stronger means increasing your bench at 1 RM. And to me, getting stronger means last week I did 4 reps, and this week I got 6. I got stronger. Last mesocycle I did 250 pounds by 6 reps. Now I'm doing 275 pounds by 6 reps. I got stronger, and that's important, because granted that your form is good, and you're stimulating the muscles you're supposed to stimulate. Like, why do you think it got stronger? Well, because your glutes got more neurologically efficient with motor units and everything, but also it probably got a little bigger too. And now you're using more weight, you're providing more tension, which is like key to muscle growth. It's kind of the most important thing. So because that 275, it had to come from somewhere. And as long as you're in your form right, say you're trying to target glutes in the squat, a lot of it probably came from your glutes. And, usually a stronger muscle is a bigger muscle in the context of hypertrophy training. So, yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny because just to like relate to that, like, yeah, I always thought that hypertrophy training and like bodybuilding training was just all about pumping light weights in the gym and then leaving like barely sweating. Like, but it's so like strength and hypertrophy and like those two things go hand in hand. Like you can't have one without the other type thing.
Yeah, 100%.
So,
And I think a lot of that comes from because there are a lot of bodybuilding plans that every single workout's different exercises. You just kind of get a rep range. You don't track anything. Okay, I'm gonna get bicep curls 4 sets by 10 to 15 reps, and then superset it with this and that and whatever. And it's just like a very pump focused workout. Which I'm not saying those are awful. I think especially if you're advanced, they have their place. Just kind of go quote get a pump. But I think like every successful bodybuilder, most of them, they are tracking the progression in some way. It might not be the same as mine. In fact, it's probably not. But some way they're getting stronger, getting more reps over time. Yeah. And the cool thing is that's just basic progressive overload. Even if you're an Olympic lifter and don't really care about strength and powerlifting sense or body like physique, if you snatch 225 and then you snatch 230, what'd you do? You got stronger. So it's like an important aspect of all types of training.
For sure. Yeah. No, I really think we like nailed that topic. I don't want to like talk about it too much more because I feel like we're gonna completely exhaust people. But I think I think that's great. So I hope you got whoever's listening. I hope you guys got something from that conversation because I sure did.
And I hope one of the things we got too is that there's just a lot more goes into it that meets the eye.
Yes.
And you're better off finding a method that works for you that does fall in line with some basic principles. And that's basically it. Find what works for you, make sure it's not crazy, follows in line with some basic principles. And if you have any questions, ask people like us that dedicate their whole entire lives to this kind of thing.
No, exactly. Yeah. So going off of this, I wanted to talk a little bit about like recovery and just kind of optimizing it because I think that's an aspect of training that a lot of like newbies are just like, I don't know, even me for a while before I kind of realized how important it was, like just really take for granted. So, when it comes to like, again, these could be a completely different podcast topic, but like sleep, nutrition, active recovery, just like making the most of your rest days.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, I just want to, the first thing that came to mind, and then because you brought it up, the deloads. So for some reason, people just think that deloads are dumb and you just got to train, 52 weeks a year, 365, all this kind of stuff.
I'm not going to lie. That was me for a long time
before
I actually did one, and it blew my mind.
It was like the greatest thing since sliced bread. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you feel like you don't need a deload, you're not trained hard enough. And I can say that with confidence. If you can go 10 weeks, 12 weeks without taking a break, your training is not hard enough. And hard as in like productive. I can almost say that with certain confidence, unless you are some type of recovery god, because we are human beings, and this training it's a big stress in a lot of ways. And
if you're not feeling it in your muscles, think about your nervous system, because that's one thing too. I was like, damn, I'm really putting my nervous system through a lot of freaking stress, like pushing it so hard. So it's not just like, oh, well, I don't feel sore, like my body doesn't feel fatigued. It's like, well, think about all the internal things going on.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's so much from this muscle. So that's why for me, I have my clients I track their resting heart rate. I track their hours of sleep per night. So I can use all these metrics as well as how sore they are, plus how the performance is, as an indication of a deload. So let's say, we've been training for 4 weeks pretty hard, and I start to notice that their reps kind of go down, or they don't increase the reps anymore. Or the weight, when I give them a weight increase, the reps go down, or whatever it is. Plus their sleep is getting a little worse. Maybe they're telling me a little more irritable. I'm like, okay, so this is a really good indication that it's probably time for a deload, given some other factors. So it's so important though, because if you just went, 365, 52 weeks a year, you wouldn't make optimal progress. There is something to it, and the research supports this, that we need to give ourselves kind of these desensitization phases, which a deload can do, to kind of like resensitize ourselves to training, and then kind of go a little. Nobody can see me, but like a graph, like a up down, but kind of chronically going up. instead of just going up, 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 because A, that's just impossible. You know, with anything, you just can't do that. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. And I don't know. And I think too, well, I feel like deloads too, like you have to make sure it's a legitimate deload and not just like,
Oh yeah.
you know what I mean? Because like you don't want to just like go easier for a week, but then like still make it hard enough that you're not really giving your body a chance to recover. So
Yes.
like what like you personally, like how do you kind of track to make sure that it's
Yeah.
easy enough, it's enough of a deload for you that it's actually going to be effective?
I am so glad I brought that up because I made the mistake for so long because I don't really have a solid plan. So what I do, and it's so foolproof that anybody can do it. I generally speaking, not always, but I will cut my volume down by 2/3. So let's say, I was doing 20 sets per week per chest. I will now the next week for the deal of the week do whatever 2/3 of that, like 8 or something like that around there, 6, 8. So
So you'll only do like a third of the volume, basically,
yes,
not 2/3?
basically, yes, exactly, yeah. So I'll just do a third of the volume, whatever that is. So you're doing 30 sets, just do 10 that next week, and then I'll literally just cut my reps in half that I did the previous week. So the 0 reps from reserve week, let's say I did 16 reps by whatever weight. The next week I will do for that set, I will just do 8 reps. That like that tells me that automatically like that's going to leave me at least 8 reps from reserve, if not more. So it's going to be easy as heck. Like 8 reps from reserve is pretty easy. It's pretty easy.
Yeah,
especially if you're doing 16 reps. You think if you do a set and you have a 16 rep set, reps like 1 through 10, and they're you're like by 10 you're starting to feel it, but then like past that you're like, okay, oh my god, here we go.
Yeah.
So like by 8 you're really just barely starting to feel it. And it honestly feels so unproductive, but it is so helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and usually I do keep the weight the same, just because I've experimented with both, and I kind of found that if I decrease, so before I would try to decrease the weight and basically do the same amount of reps, and I can't say this is a perfect comparison because I'll do some other things kind of differently too, but I found that because granted I would do the similar movement the next mesocycle, if I decreased the weight for a week, I would kind of come back and it would just be like the weight would feel unnecessarily heavy just because I wasn't used to it because I kind of took a week break from that specific weight. So yeah, now I literally I cut the reps. I do about a third of the reps, and then I just do about half of the reps. About a third of the sets as last week, and then I do about half of the reps that I did. Successive reps, kind of comparing, like say I did on Friday, I did on set 2, I did 8 reps. The deload Friday on set 2, I only do 4. And then I feel great. The training is super easy. I get more time to do work and stuff because it's just kind of nice. It cuts my sessions down, and so that's how I've been doing it, and it's been working great. I love it. I mean, can do
you're
a
still
lot.
like stimulating your muscles, right?
Yes,
but you're
exactly.
just not. Yeah, I think the way you said it feels super unproductive, and you feel like, I don't know, like part of me, maybe just because I'm weird, but I was like, oh, I feel lazy, you know what I mean? I'm like I'm not pushing myself hard enough, like this is not productive. But then you get to the following weeks when you feel fresh, and it's just like, oh my god, that was so worth it, because now I'm like ready to rock and roll, like I feel amazing. You wouldn't be able to feel that good and like hit those numbers and whatever your goals are if you didn't have that week of just recovery and like taking a step back.
Oh, and literally, like on so many levels, like I said, the main one is probably the CNS, the nervous system. But training is a stress, and your body kind of takes into stress for the most part as like it has a hard time differentiating. And this is very simple talk, but so training is a stress. Getting in a fight with your girlfriend is a stress. So the more you have on that, and the more you're training, and as you're getting more weeks and weeks into your mesocycle, your phase, you're training more and more, just either by volume or weight, whatever it is, you're going up. So you need to flush away that fatigue somehow, because increasing your workload in any kind of respect increases fatigue too. So deload, flush that out. Now you're back to a little lower, and then boom, you're good to go.
Exactly.
Done right in a perfect world.
No, exactly. Yeah. No, that's
so
cool.
how do you kind of take your like you said, you used to say that you said that you used to kind of like go too hard in deload. So what do you kind of do now to manage that and everything?
I'm taking what you said because some of that stuff is stuff that I just haven't, like I've done more of I usually lower the weight versus just like cut the volume like so low, because I was kind of surprised. I don't know, when you said like a third of the volume, I'm like, oh, that's a lot. Like I was thinking like
Yeah.
50%, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So honestly, I'm gonna take a page from your book and try that out the next time I have a deload week, because I'm sure I'll respond way better from doing that. Because I mean, knowing myself, I'm still probably taking my deload weeks a little too hard.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like it's definitely a deload. There's a noticeable difference, but I didn't think about, I guess, manipulating like all the variables so much, if that makes sense.
So, and here's the cool thing too. The big reason why I used to go too hard on deloads because I was afraid of losing muscle. But
Yeah.
unless you deload and then you literally sit on your butt the whole week and not move, 1 week you're not going to lose any muscle in normal circumstances.
Well,
Yeah.
exactly. And if
So
anything, I feel like you're just giving your muscles more time to like repair and recover. So
yeah,
I don't really think
it's really positive for sure.
yeah, so if anything, your strength is not going anywhere. So
But yeah, no, for sure. So what I was gonna say too is that you know, let's say you have a situation where, and it's nice too because it's kind of flexible. So like I remember when I was camping one time and I was deload week for me, which I love to line up my vacation with deload.
I was
Then like
literally just gonna say that. I'm like, that's genius.
yeah, well, exactly. And so what I did was I obviously didn't have my equipment, so like I couldn't really do my exact like half the reps for that exercise because I didn't have my football ball bench or press, whatever it was. So I literally just did like 4 sets of chest per week. So I just did banded push-ups, like pretty far from failure, and then like that's good enough because you just need to do the minimal amount that will maintain the muscle for the most part. So if that's if that's four sets per week, then boom.
There you
That's
go.
good
Yeah.
enough. And like I was laughing the other day. I literally did I did ladder raises and I did only 2 sets and one set was 4 and then 3 reps. So just imagine like
What?
3 reps. Yep, yeah, that's it. Because I was kind of doing a little heavier. This was a weird phase. It was a maintenance before this deload. So I was basically everything was in the 7 to 12 range or the 4 to 8, depending on the movement. So like yeah, the week before that I did like 7 reps and 8 reps on ladder raises. So then the deload was just half of that, 4 and 3. I mean, or the other way around, but you know what I mean. So it just felt like I picked up these 30-pound dumbbells and I just did 3 reps and then I
I
put
mean,
them
that's
down.
a pretty hefty
Yeah.
lateral raise to begin with, though.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, even like when you get heavier, even like the weight feels a little more like 1 rep. I'm like, oh, okay, this is pretty heavy. But 3 reps compared to 8 before, nothing. Piece of cake.
Yeah, exactly.
So
For
yeah,
sure.
I'll say if you wanted to, for sure. If you want to like send me over your plan next time you have a deload or whatever, and just kind of want to like have any questions, navigate through that in some way, I'd love to kind of give my 2 cents on that.
No, I would love
Yeah.
that. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, see, I mean, just like us doing this podcast, I mean, because we have like, obviously, I think we have a similar base of knowledge, but you've been a trainer longer than I have. You've got more experience, and you're also in more of like, again, kind of the bodybuilding phase of things, versus I'm not focused on that. So like,
Yeah.
we're constantly like learning things from each other, and it's just cool because that's kind of what this is all about.
Yeah.
So from here, I think we've basically covered most of what we wanted to in this part. And then our next podcast episode, we're going to dive into more recovery things when it comes to sleep, nutrition, active recovery, things that you're doing like outside of your training sessions that are super important, that are going to set you up for success in the gym.
Perfect. Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think this was a really productive podcast, and I hope you guys got something out of it. As always, the more we do this, the more I actually get feedback from people I know, and it's so helpful. So please leave a comment on YouTube. If you didn't know, we're on now, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Beaker. We're on a lot of platforms. So
yeah, and I think you can access all those platforms off of like Anchor, right?
Yes. Yeah, which will be in the show notes below. Provided you are on YouTube. Sometimes the show notes get a little messed up on other platforms, but hey, that's all right.
For sure. And again, both our websites as well have the links to find these episodes on Spotify, all the popular platforms that you may use. And yeah, again, feedback is always appreciated. We love knowing how we can make this better for you guys.
Absolutely. Awesome, Paige. Well, as always, thank you so much.
Yes, you too. Until next time.
Perfect. Have a good one, guys.
Bye.